Why are we on McCrag again? McCrag! Welcome on in, this is Sprues and Studs, and yes, yet again, we are on the Ultramarines homeworld McCrag so that we can explore more action figures from the Ultramarines JoyToy lineup. And in this one, we are going to be taking a look at the Chapter Champion and see exactly what makes this guy the champion of champions, per se. So there's nothing to do except dive right on in.
Man, I love using Space Marine weapons to open up Space Marine boxes. Well, this is a great champion. Ta-da! All right, Space Roman Soldier fans, we have a lot to unpack over here, as this action figure is probably one of the most highly adorned and decorated one that has been produced by JoyToy as well as Games Workshop. So let's unpack this guy right now. So the first thing that we're seeing over here is a gigantic Trojan mane on the top of this guy's helmet. And this mane is heavily shaded up top here. So there's a lot of character that you can see. And moving on down, there is a nice Ultramarines U right here. And then we see a nice characteristic wreath that is wrapping around the whole entire top of this helmet. And down here, you get to see, yay, metallic looking lenses that are here, which I completely love. And finally, you get to see some shading here in these divots right here in the helmet. And this helmet is pretty awesome, I'll have to say. Very, very unique looking. So we're going to take a look at this pauldron, and this is a pauldron like no other that we've seen before as well. You've got a gigantic skull here with the wreath, lots of shading going on with the sunken areas on the empty eye sockets. And across this pauldron are these red cords over here, and within these cords, it's nice that they actually did shading down here. So you can see there's a lot of depth. And finally, you have an engraved Ultra here within the pauldron. And once again, lots of shading going on with this. Flip around to the other side, you get to see the most glorious McCrag banner over here that is engraved into this guy's shoulder. The Ultramarines U is going on right here, as well as a wreathed skull that we seem to see over and over again on this action figure. On the body of this action figure, you've got a very, very prominent Ultramarines U and plenty of purity seals. In fact, a total of 5 of them that are tacked on this guy's chest because he's just that special. And these purity seals are once again engraved here. So there is plenty of shading going on. And within the midsection of this action figure, you see these golden cables that run down. And then around the waist is a golden skull, as well as a scabbard for this action figure. And the scabbard is clearly a gold color. Aside from that, this guy has a massive leather belt that we've actually have seen in a few of the Ultramarines action figures. So this is a soft bendable plastic material. It's been highlighted on the edges, and it has all these nice metal buckles at the bottom of it that has the Ultramarines U on it. So this leather skirt, whatever the heck you want to call it, pretty much runs across the whole entire action figure, except that this left side is completely blank for some odd reason. But regardless, this is a very unique adornment. Also, since we're in the same area, you have another chain over here that has a bunch of iconography that's dangling down. So you've got these 2 skulls right here, as well as this very interesting icon that I don't know exactly how to describe to you. Aside from that, on the shin area, there is a skull with a blazing sun around it. There's, again, lots of shading, and it's got Ultra on this banner over here, and it is also engraved into this figure. So finally, we're going to take a look at the backpack. The backpack is actually different from the rest of the other action figures that we've seen. Instead of this area being silver, this is clearly gold. You have a very prominent gold skull, And these little vent areas on the side here are also a gold color too. And most of them, if not all of them, are usually this very weathered silver. So this is a little bit of a departure from what we've been seeing. Now, putting this guy down, he has two separate swords. One is a very gigantic power sword. And, I'll be honest with you, this power sword looks a little bit plain in terms of the decoration. I would have liked it if there was a little bit more pizzazz or flair to it. But regardless, this is also a very unique looking sword. You've got this monochrome silver here. There's no gradient where there's a dark silver and transition to a lighter one that we've seen on other power swords. And instead of this node being blue, this is clearly gold. The hilt is gold. And finally, at the end of the sword, you get to see a wreath down here. The second sword that this guy has is a gladius, and it is completely mirrored by a Roman gladiator's gladius. So this one, unlike the bigger one, you do get to see that transition from the dark silver here to the lighter silver, which I really like that transition. And rounding out, there is that Ultramarines U. So because I have an extensive library of, obviously, action figures, I'm going to now compare this chapter champion to this company champion over here. And let's see if we can pick up the differences. And clearly there is a ton of differences that we can actually glean from cursory glance here. So starting off with the helmeted area, I believe that the gold here that is used on the chapter champion is clearly more gold than your company champion. This is more like a bronze copper kind of color on the right-hand side. However, that being said, so this guy has that Trojan mane that I like to call it. The wreath on this one is just plain gold. This one is green. You've got the same looking red metallic lenses. The overall look of the helmet is pretty much the same. Clearly, though, the pauldron on the chapter champion is insane compared to the company champion here. And flipping over the other side, and I would have to say, the same goes for the chapter champion. It just looks bigger, meaner, and more bold. And obviously, well, it should be, as this guy is the chapter champion. So the adornment on the chapter champion is actually more pronounced and more unique. This one we've seen before on a little bit of the other figures where you have this generic skull with these wings that are flying down. And this one actually has a cloth tabard that is going on, while this one does not. And then on the waist area, the adornments are completely different here. You've got a lantern as well as this amulet here, whereas you have this very long gold-looking chain here. As pointed out before, the chapter champion has this leather belt thing. This one does not. The knee area is completely different actually from the chapter champion versus the company champion. And the shins are obviously a lot more adorned on the chapter versus the company. We're going to flip this guy around. And as I pointed out to you, the backpack is completely different. So you've got the gold adornments here versus the regular silver adornments that we've seen on all the Primaris line. Then flipping around over here, I'm going to just point out that this is a regular looking power sword that we've seen before on a lot of the action figures here, whereas this thing is clearly larger and more unique compared to this regular one here. So this is obviously the one that the chapter champion wields versus this one is the company champion. All right, folks, that is the review of the very, very highly detailed chapter champion, and then the side-by-side comparison between the chapter versus the company champion. So let me wrap this one up for you all.
What a spectacular looking Space Roman, don't you think? So as I was reviewing this action figure, I was actually quite shocked and quite impressed on the level of artistry that's on this action figure. Obviously, JoyToy does a fantastic job of translating the GW miniature into this action figure form. But this thing is really second to none, I would have to say. The level of adornments, the iconography is just probably A to S tier in my opinion. So there's a lot of things to like about this action figure. Clearly, if you are a fan of Romanness, this is going to be your go-to action figure. I personally really like the helmet. There's a lot of things that are going on up there, especially with the Trojan mane, as well as the wreath, as well as just the regalness of this helmet. And then as you are looking down at the unique power swords over here, I think that they're also very interesting and do stand out from the rest of the action figure Ultramarines crowd. I would actually recommend you to actually buy this action figure, mainly because this is 100% Ultramar right here, encased in one entire action figure. He really does represent everything that Macragge has to offer, and probably all the regalness that they have to offer too. So that is my take on this action figure. So anyways, thanks for tuning in as usual, supporters and members of the chapter. I really appreciate all of your comments and likes that you have been leaving in the description below. And for those of you who haven't subscribed, subscribe, as it helps the channel very, very much. But anyways, I hope you do enjoy this review. There's going to be a ton more to review in the coming future, especially with all those unique characters that are coming in September. So anyways, with that being said, this is Spruce and Studs, and I'll see you all in the next one.